My grandmother, who lived in Bavaria, suggested we place iron nails in the corners of every room, a traditional German protection ritual against malevolent spirits. We followed her advice, but the disturbances grew more violent. Welcome to undeniable fear, where real stories blur the line between the living and the dead. Tonight, we bring you The House on Lindenstrasse, a German family's haunting. In 2003, a family in Hamburg moved into what seemed like a peaceful home surrounded by birch trees. But soon whispers filled the halls, fires ignited without cause, and shadows began to move on their own. What started as a new beginning turned into a descent into madness and terror, as something ancient and malevolent made it clear that it never intended to leave. In 2003, my parents lived in a quiet German town on the outskirts of Hamburg. Our life then was simple and happy. My father worked for a logistics company, my mother was a homemaker, and our family of 5 lived in a modest but beautiful brick house surrounded by birch trees. We had relatives scattered across Germany, and while some of them were genuinely kind, there were always those whose smiles hid resentment and jealousy. My parents often hosted family gatherings, unaware that among their guests were people who wished them harm. The strange events began gradually, almost imperceptibly, as if something dark had slipped into our home unnoticed. My father was the first to change. Once calm and cheerful, he started waking in the middle of the night claiming someone had struck him. He would shout at empty corners, insisting that someone was whispering threats in his ear. Doctors found nothing wrong, no neurological or psychological condition to explain his behavior. My mother began to worry he was losing his mind, but deep down she felt something else was happening. We moved to another house closer to the city center, thinking a change of environment would help. Instead, it made things worse. The new house was old, 3 stories tall with creaking floors and cold, damp walls that seemed to breathe at night. My siblings and I started feeling uneasy as soon as we moved in. At dusk, the air in the house grew heavy, as if invisible eyes watched from every corner. I was the second to be affected. Every evening, just after the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I would feel a strange pull, an overwhelming urge to go outside. Sometimes I climbed to the roof and sat there for hours, staring blankly into the darkness. Other times, I would wander into the street without knowing why. It felt as though something was calling me from beyond sight, something ancient and persistent. When my mother gave birth to my youngest brother later that year, her condition deteriorated rapidly. The doctors described it as postpartum depression, but what we witnessed was far from ordinary. She would wake screaming in the night, gasping for breath, her eyes wide with terror. She claimed invisible hands were choking her, and at times she would bolt up the stairs to the roof as if fleeing from something only she could see. Then the fires began. It started with a faint smell of smoke in the living room. Within seconds, the switchboard erupted in flames. Days later, the car parked in front of the house caught fire spontaneously. The police investigated, but could not find a cause. Soon, parts of the lower floor began to burn without any source of ignition. We would extinguish one fire only to find another starting somewhere else. It was as if the house itself had become hostile to us. Desperate, my parents turned to the church. A local pastor visited and blessed each room with holy water, reciting prayers in Latin. For a while, things seemed to calm down, but the peace was short-lived. My father began to see shadows moving across the walls, even when no light source could have created them. At night, footsteps echoed on the upper floor, though no one was there. Doors slammed shut on their own, and objects shifted places as if moved by unseen hands. One night, I was painting alone in the living room when I noticed a soft glow coming from under my brother's locked door. Peeking through the keyhole, I saw a small child sitting in the middle of the room, illuminated by a white light. He looked about 6 years old, smiling faintly. For a moment, I thought it was my brother, but he was asleep beside my parents. The child's eyes met mine, and his smile widened. The light flickered, and he vanished. When I finally opened the door, the room was empty and ice cold. My mother's nightmares intensified. She claimed to see an old woman with greenish hair standing beside her bed every night. The woman would whisper something in a language my mother couldn't understand, sometimes laughing softly. Once, my mother woke to find that same woman standing over my youngest brother's crib. She screamed and began reciting prayers, but the apparition only laughed louder until disappearing into the shadows. We tried everything: medicine, prayer, even folklore remedies. My grandmother, who lived in Bavaria, suggested we place iron nails in the corners of every room, a traditional German protection ritual against malevolent spirits. We followed her advice, but the disturbances grew more violent. At night, we heard footsteps running on the roof, sometimes accompanied by the sound of dragging chains. Stones would rain down onto the tiles, but when we rushed outside, there was no one in sight. One morning, my father found a bundle of real black hair on the roof, tied tightly with a piece of red thread. It was wedged between the tiles in a place impossible for someone to reach without a ladder. He burned it immediately, but that same night, all the light in the house flickered and went out. My mother's rosary broke in half as she held it. Soon, doppelganger sightings began. My sister swore she saw me standing by the staircase one evening, staring silently. But I had been at work. My father saw my mother sitting at the kitchen table at dawn, though she was still asleep upstairs. These second selves always appeared expressionless and vanished if anyone tried to approach. Our family's stability crumbled. My father lost his job after repeated absences caused by exhaustion and confusion. Financial problems followed, and one by one, we sold our possessions to survive. It felt as if something was feeding on our despair. One of the most terrifying nights came in the winter of 2004. A blizzard had covered the city in white silence. Around midnight, the power went out again. We huddled together in the living room near a candle. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. 3 slow, heavy knocks. My father opened it to find no one there. Then came another knock, louder this time, from the back door. He ran there and again found nothing. But when he returned, muddy footprints had appeared across the floor, leading from the entrance to the staircase and up to the roof. He climbed up slowly, holding a flashlight. From below, we heard him shout something in German. "Who is there? Who's there?" Followed by silence. When he returned, his face was pale. He said he had seen a tall shadow standing near the chimney, staring at him with hollow eyes. After that night, the activity became unbearable. Our family barely slept. Whispers filled the hallways, the baby cried endlessly, and the temperature in the house dropped so low that our breath fogged in the air even when the heating was on. We contacted a Catholic priest from a nearby parish who specialized in exorcisms. He agreed to visit. When he arrived, the moment he stepped inside, The crucifix around his neck snapped and fell to the ground. He didn't flinch, but began the prayers immediately. As he sprinkled holy water, the house began to shake. A deep growl echoed from the upper floor, and then a deafening scream filled the air. The lights burst, plunging us into darkness. When the screaming stopped, the priest told us in a trembling voice that something ancient had been bound to the property, that the land itself carried a curse, possibly rooted in old pagan rituals once performed there. Within weeks, we moved out. The process was agonizing. The doors jammed, movers fell ill, and the car transporting our belongings broke down multiple times. It felt as if the house refused to let us go. When we finally left, the air outside felt lighter, as though a weight had been lifted. Life improved somewhat after that. The fires stopped, the nightmares faded, and the oppressive feeling eased. But the damage was done. My father never fully recovered his sanity, and my mother remained fragile for years. Even now, when I return to Hamburg, I avoid driving past that street. Locals say the house remains empty, though sometimes neighbors report seeing lights flicker inside and hearing laughter echoing from the upper floors late at night. Some believe it was just a haunting. Others whisper it was something darker, a curse born of envy and betrayal, sustained by ancient forces buried deep beneath German soil. Whatever it was, it followed our family for years, reminding us that evil doesn't always knock on the door. Sometimes it moves in quietly and never truly leaves. If you've experienced something terrifying or unexplainable, share your story with us. It might be featured next. Don't forget to subscribe for more true horror tales, and remember, fear is undeniable.